Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday, October 20th, October 18th, let's not rush it, edition of the Auburn Zoning Board of Appeals. Before I get started, is anybody recording this meeting this evening? Okay, hearing none, seeing none. If you have cell phones on you, could you please put them down to a silent mode of some sort? Do I have a motion to open the meeting?
Motion to open. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Also, before we get started tonight, I'd like to introduce Mr. Peter Jones. He's our newest member of the Auburn Zoning Board of Appeals. Peter comes to us, he will be serving as an alternate, so in the event one of us is not present, a full-time member, he will come up and be a voting member. During the processes, however, I do believe it's important for the alternates to have time to speak concerning the applications so they become familiar with the process. So he will be participating tonight, but will not be voting. So our first hearing is at 7 o'clock p.m. Applicant FW Web Company requesting a special permit to allow the distribution and sales at wholesale retail merchandise under section 3.2.7.1 and section 6.2.3, relief from parking regulations of the Auburn zoning bylaws on property located at 33 Sword Street, Auburn, Mass. Map 11, parcel 7. Is the applicant present? Do I have a motion to open the hearing?
Motion to open the hearing. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good evening, sir. If you could introduce yourself
Yes.
and give us an overview of what you're trying to accomplish.
Good evening. For the record, Bill Hannigan with Hannigan Engineering. With me is Andy Macbeth from Greenleaf Construction, along with Jamie Anderson, who is also with Greenleaf. The project is located at 33 Sword Street. Can you see this from here, or is it a better
I can.
location?
Can all the other numbers?
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
Okay. So the existing building located at 33 Sword Street was the former location of Imperial Worldwide, one of their distribution sites. It's proposed to convert the interior of the building. There's no additions to the building, so the building footprint stays the same. But the inside of the building will have some changes and modifications to allow for a showroom area, allow for an expansion of the existing office areas, and allow for a contractor pickup location on the property. The existing condition of the site is somewhat in some disrepair. It's aged well, but it's time for some upgrades, and that's kind of what we're doing on the outside of the building. The existing docks, there's several docks along the west side of the property. Some of those docks are going to be removed to make room for the showroom. Others are going to be, transformed in use for the project. On the front of the building, the parking is going to be renovated and redone. On the side, it's going to be kind of cleaned up and some additional drainage structures and put in. So I'm going to flip over that. Can the audio hear me if I...
No, you have to stay by the microphone, sir. You could bring that, if you want to relocate that next to you, that's fine.
Okay, so along the west side of the building, there is a series of loading docks right now. 4 loading docks in this area here will be removed. Those will be blocked up and I wouldn't say blocked up, actually, so they would be basically changed over to a glass entry, which Andy can talk about the actual finishing of it, but that's really where the showroom portion starts. The front left, as you face it, is where the showroom would be. Approximately 5,500 square feet. Right now, the existing office is along the entire front of the building, so that portion to the west would be part of the showroom, would become the showroom. The remaining portion of the front would be office, and that would actually expand into a portion of the warehouse with some additional office space, along with some training areas or a training room off that office. So the front office areas and training areas are all accessed basically from the main front door, which is existing. So that access would come in about this location here. There'd be a secondary access along the side. So the front parking area, we were at one of the meetings, pre-submission meetings, we looked at the parking with the the town engineer, and he requested that we take a look at whether that parking could be reworked into better compliance. We've done that. So these spaces up here, right now, it's some handicap spaces, and it kind of curves and not really functional, or maybe it's just functional, but not really compliant. So we've made this area compliant with the regulations. We've picked up some parking where there's an existing patio area, kind of where the flagpole is if you've been out to the site. So that area is being reworked. On the east side of the building, this portion of the warehouse is still partly considered warehouse, but it's really where the contractors will go in and pick up supplies and products that they're going to be bringing to a job site to install. So there's parking along the side of that building. There's a couple of new penetrations and openings in the side of the building to allow for the products to move in and out, both from the warehouse perspective as well as the contractor pickup area. Main contractor pickup entrances in this location, a larger overhead doors in this location here, and a couple of other entrances along the way. Back to the east side, there's 6 loading docks that will be remaining in this area here. 2 of them will be for tractor trailers. The rest of them will be more or less for single unit vehicles, box trucks, and a little bit larger. And then the last 2 doors that are going to remain, that's where the dumpster pad's going to be placed, so they'll be able to come in and out of the building with the trash and be able to just drop it into the dumpster. The dumpsters will be covered, but they won't be fenced in because of just the practicality of putting fences around a loading area is very difficult. So that's what's happening in that area there. The parking extends along the east side of the building, continues along the west side of the building. There's 7 parking spaces in the back of the building as well. The rear part of the building is going to be a storage area for larger product, such as, for example, larger sections of piping. Some racks are going to be back there, some gas tanks, oil tanks, and stuff like that are obviously unused to be new tanks. Those will be back in that area as well. So those products will be stored within a gated area to allow that to be secured overnight. So the use of the property is really one part of the special permit process that we're going through. So that's an outline of what's happening within the building. The use is not a prohibited use. It's allowed with a special permit from this board. So it's the intent of the presentation is to give you a feel of what's happening within the building. Relative to the parking, that's a second special permit request. The combination of uses within the building, if you took a look at the square footage of the uses along with the showroom area, et cetera, that would require a total of 101 parking spaces on the project. Right now, under existing conditions, there's 98. We're proposing to actually reduce that down to 80. If you look on the second page of the narrative, we have the current need breakdown relative to office employees, showroom employees for the self-serve counter, the contractor pickup area, employees for the warehouse, and employees for the warehouse drivers. The total employees anticipated in the initial construction or operations is 37 employees. The future need, which is extended depending upon the time of how the operations go, they could add up to 11 employees to the property. With that, that leaves an extra 11 spaces on the property. And the total number of parking spaces that is needed is 69 spaces, and that would include 6 parking spaces for customers at the showroom and 15 spaces for customers at the customer pickup or the contractor pickup area. So you have all the employees there. You could have 6 customers in the showroom. You could have 15 customers at the contractor pickup area, and you would still have 11 spaces left over on the project. So we basically feel that the special permit would be validated by the need of the project, along with the fact that we are including the customer demand that would be, if we have 6 customers in the showroom at once, that'd be fantastic. So the extra parking is there to accommodate even if you had more. So that's really the essence of the application. I try to keep things short and sweet when I get up and do presentations, especially when the Red Sox are on at 8 o'clock. So If there are any questions regarding the site, I can discuss them. I should touch on one other thing. Some of the improvements that we're making relative to the site, aside from the front, there will be some added landscaping, which is going to be reworked into the front of the project as well to beautify that. Along this easterly side, right now there's an existing drainage system, which is a catch basin to catch basin to catch basin system. When you go out there, if you went out there to the site, the catch basin up at the upper end of it is literally filled with pavement grindings, or not even grindings, there's broken pavement and gravel and dirt. So that whole, we're anticipating that whole system is probably clogged. So what we're doing is alongside of it, we're actually going to put in a brand new system. So there'll be a new catch basin installed, and then that would go to a manhole, and then from there, that would go to another manhole to pick up the flow. So there would be a catch basin to manhole system, which is more, that's more standardized as of now. We would have an additional catch basin in the back, and we would pick up the roof runoff off the roof, which goes through that same drain system now, and discharge that to the back. We would have an outfall just beyond, and it really would improve the drainage system. We have reviewed this with Conservation. The Conservation Commission has closed the hearing, and at this point, we're waiting for the DEP to issue a file number relative to the project before they can issue the order of conditions. So they've actually already reviewed this as well. Okay. I think that's it relative to site. I can move on to building, if there's any questions on the building, what it's going to look like.
Would you rather hear the entire presentation, or would you like to talk about some things now?
I would be fine with hearing it all now.
Okay. Just want to make sure the board was
Yep.
into
So
that.
basically, the building right now is really kind of nondescript. It's going to be reworked, leaving a lot of the brick that's in the front right now, adding some signage relative to the branding for both FW Webb and Frank Webb Home would be the branding that would be on the site. So this would really be the front elevation that you would see. The rear elevation you really wouldn't see, but that's the treatment that would be on that side of the building. The typical red stripe that Webb has on their buildings would wrap itself around the building. So this is the left side elevation, so this is where the loading docks are. There are presently loading docks in this area right here. Those would be removed, blocked up, and some windows put in, as I said earlier. These two docks would end up being the loading docks for the tractor trailers. These four would be utilized for box truck type deliveries, single unit vehicles. And then this is where the dumpster would be in front of these two dock areas right now, but probably in front of one, with the other one being closed and used for additional access if needed. On the east side, this is the door that where the contractor would enter in to go in and do their pickup, and these would be the doors for access to the building for some of the larger equipment. And I can hold that up if you can't quite see it. There's one. This is kind of, this building is starting here and goes the whole stretch. So this is kind of a split view of the building. Okay. The interior portion of the building, this is really where the heart of the operations goes, and what I'll do is I'll let Andy Macbeth talk a little bit about that relative to how the flow within the building is going to work.
Thank you.
Good evening, members. Andy Macbeth, Greenleaf Construction, or FW Webb's construction manager. So like Bill said, this is the front of the building here. We have the showroom, which is about 5,500 square feet here, with the office to the right of that, training room. And then behind the office is the self-serve, which is the wholesale contractor piece, which is just under 12,000 square feet. It has gondolas, kind of like shelving you would see in a grocery store, basically. And then on the bottom of the plan, we have the loading docks. We have 6 loading docks that will remain. And then the balance of the space is mostly high bay racking, which you can see in these long lines. There's a mezzanine that's existing. We're going to keep that for tub storage and that kind of stuff, light storage. And the at-grade door access is right here into the building. And that's pretty much it for the floor plan layout.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cussy, do you have any questions?
I have none right now.
Okay. Mr. Chicolo?
I do. Do you currently do retail
there? There is retail. Is there any kind of a breakdown that you have on the time of day where your contractors have come in, got what they need, and then they're off to the job, versus retail people coming in? What I'm looking for is something that'll tell me that retail people don't really come in until, we'll say, 9 o'clock, and all the contractors are gone, and that will help me, it'll set my mind at ease with the parking spaces.
It's not quite that clean. It's close. The contractor piece opens at 6:30 and goes till 5. The showroom opens at 8, but I would say that, the vast majority of the traffic is later in the day, 9 to 5 type of situation. They are open one night. Thursdays typically a little later. It's also by appointment. The showroom, while it's quote-unquote retail, I call it display retail because it doesn't really fit into any of the boxes that are typically provided, because it's mostly by appointment. So if there are 5 people there, 5 customers for retail, that's like really busy. So it's not traditional retail in the sense of a cash register and lines and that kind of stuff.
What percentage of your contractors are gone by the time, and out on a job, they've got their supplies by the time retail opens?
Norm, you want to take a guess at that? That's a...
Can you approach the lectern, please, sir? I need you to be on the microphone.
In other words, some of the parking spaces that you have, you say,
I may
okay,
be able
the
to
contractors will use
I may be able to
these.
dispel some of the concern, because one of the things that we focused on when we started looking at the building was where the entrances were going to be for each of the uses, and to make sure there was sufficient parking for each of those uses independently. So in the main office area, there's parking in here and along the side of the building. All of the showroom parking is right here. So this is going to be basically employee parking in this area here, some employee parking in the back and along the side. So this is going to be all the parking for the contractor pickup. So there really shouldn't be any interaction between the traffic between the contractor pickup area and the showroom area, because it's on the opposite side of the building. So people for the contractor would come down Sword Street, turn in, and access the contractor pickup area, and the showroom people would drive around and come into the parking spaces up in this area here.
You have a sale, hypothetically, you have a sale. You have 25 retail customers come in between 8 and 9. Is there enough parking for those 25?
I don't think that the facility operates like that. I think that it's
It's a
not...
hypothetical, I told you.
There aren't that many.
Hypothetically, we'd have 6 plus 11, so we'd have 17 spaces if all the employees were there, and if all of the truck bays were taken, and if all of the spaces were taken up by contractor pickup all at the same time. So we have an extra 11 on the site.
All right, I
Okay?
think you've
And like I
answered it
said,
enough for me.
the intent of the design is to separate the traffic so there's no conflicts, okay, with the different types of traffic on the project. But the intent of the way FW Webb, I'm sorry, Frank Webb Home operates, I can let them speak about it a little more, but basically it's a contractor will say, hey, look, you want to look at a faucet, go down to the Sword Street location and go in there and take a look at the faucets that you want and go pick one out. So it's not like people are going into Home Depot to pick up anything from light bulbs to bleach to grass seed to that type of thing. It's
I got you.
it's a different operation.
All right, now, just for my purposes, when I look at this, I see an entrance, I'm taking it as the entrance from Sword Street.
On this one? Yep.
Where on that is the entrance from Sword Street?
The Sword Street, well, this entrance is wide. It actually goes over to here. It's a very wide swath, which is kind of shared between the two people on this side, or the two landowners on this side.
Okay.
And they've already had conversations with Cadent. Cadent is the abutter, so they've already talked about when we do the drainage, we might redo paving on the whole area and kind of clean it all up between building to building, stuff like that. So that there's a mutual need and a mutual use of this area by both parties. So the line that you're seeing on the plan right here in the shaded form is really just within our property. Okay, so the actual driveway is much wider than that. It's probably close to 30 feet wide in that area.
Okay,
Okay.
that's all I have for now.
Mr. Maron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And gentlemen, thank you for being here, providing what to this point has been a very thorough explanation. It's a very ambitious project. We appreciate your investment, certainly, in investment with Auburn. I want to bring us back to a line of questioning that Ms. Chicolo had. And actually, before I begin, we have before us for 2 special permits.
Correct.
Right, so I don't, and I'll just go on record, I mean, I don't think that the 3271 on use is an issue, certainly for me. I think that's quite straightforward based on your operation. But I would like to bring us back to the parking issue. And recognizing that we've got various games to get home to tonight, I'll try to be brief. But the numbers for me, so if just in whole numbers, you're looking at a plan right now that serves 80 spaces, correct? So in that 80 spaces, I tabulate that 47 of them, up to 47, could be employee or staff spaces. So my only question along this line would be, I also want to comment on the types of traffic. I think you've done a nice job of designing how they won't interact based on site locations and the types of traffic. But do you have any metrics, any analytics that speak to the flow and volume? And I'm not looking for drilling it down to certain, I appreciate Mr. Cola's line of questioning on when contractors might come in and out, getting their things early, but do you have any metrics on any period of time that suggest what kind of volume of traffic your customer base is? And because I think that, I kept hearing that you're expecting that you're going to have a surplus of 11 spaces. Respectfully, do you know that? Do you know that ebb and flow of traffic based on your operation and customer base and what that's actually going to look like at peak times?
I think we're very comfortable with the parking that we're providing, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, and again, with respect, I'm not asking you if you're comfortable. I mean, you've submitted a plan, you're obviously comfortable with it.
Yeah.
What I'd be more comfortable with is knowing what your actual customer base flow is and how many spaces you would predict at a peak time, whether it's a sale or not. Because if you're anticipating 11 spaces in surplus, then this plan looks great.
Right.
But I mean, I'd like to know analytically if that's actual.
I would say it's actual. I think the spaces we're providing would be at peak, so that would be kind of the worst case scenario. So, because they're looking at probably, for a showroom piece, they're probably looking at 10 to 15 customers all day, the entire day. So 6 spaces for 10 to 15 customers. Now, they may be there for an hour. It's a much longer visit as opposed to someone going to the contractor piece where their goal is to come pick stuff up and they're hopefully in and out, in 10, 15 minutes. And you're probably looking at, as far as your self-serve customers, 100 to 200 counter hits a day, something like that. So that's divided throughout the whole day. The busiest time, is first thing in the morning for sure. There's another batch at lunchtime, middle of the day, and one batch at the end, to get stuff for the next day.
Okay.
So that's kind of the...
I appreciate the response, and I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm not doing it maliciously.
Oh, understood.
If you're telling me that you've got counter service of about 100 to 200 customers a day, then you don't have enough parking, in my view, because you can't predict when they're coming in. If they come in at an influx of morning and lunch and hit that traffic flow, you don't have parking to serve 100 customers.
No, we're pretty comfortable that it's spread out throughout the day. I don't think that there's any question about that. So.
And most...
Introduce yourself and your role.
My name's Norm Israelson. I'm the general manager of FW Webb Auburn currently. Our business is a steady flow all day. There's, in the building we're in now, we probably have 55 parking spaces, and we have plenty of parking. Our issue is more warehousing. We don't have enough space for the larger pipes, and we outgrew that building like 10 years ago. So, but they talk about busy first thing in the morning. It may be a little busier. Our business has developed into it's just a steady flow all day. And we only have 8 employees in the front to wait on the contractors, and then we have 3 employees in the showroom. So, and that handles the flow of business we currently do. Sometimes I'm trying to find stuff for them to do.
Okay, well, I mean, what I do appreciate is your response to my questions, and I do have concerns around that area, but I also appreciate that you know your business better than I do, and the flow better than I do. And so if you're serving a customer base of 100 to 200 a day in the spaces that you have now, you've obviously thought about it. Thank you for responding. I don't have anything further right now, Mr. Chairman.
You, Ms. Roach?
I guess my only comment would be, I guess, really more directed at the board than the applicant. I am very familiar with this site. I have probably been there maybe 20 times in the last 8 months. Never one time was there anyone beside one person in the showroom, beside myself and my husband. And the parking lot was probably maybe 30% full, ever. Just my observation. Never once have I ever gone there and thought, ooh, the parking. And I have been there very frequently over the last couple of months for a project going on at home. Never. There's never, ever been a problem getting a spot there ever once. That's it. Nothing else for me.
Mr. Jones?
Thank you. How many spots do you have now?
Well, the spots that are there now, there are 98 on the site right now, but if you look at the existing conditions plan, I'll pull that back up. Some of the spots on the westerly side of the property were actually painted in a direction that doesn't put all the spots on our property. So those spots we've not counted in our proposed design. We've also removed many spots that were in the back of the building to allow for the storage of the larger pieces that we talked about in the open storage area. So those are some of the changes that we've made on the site to accommodate the need of the building and the use of the building, and that it is sacrificing some of the parking spaces, but part of the analysis that we did was to figure out exactly how many employees they are anticipating day one, how many employees they're anticipating in the future based upon normal growth, and with that, and including 6 people at the showroom and including 15 at the counters at the same time with only 8 employees, which I'm not sure how that works, that we're able to still have 11 spaces in excess on the project. So that's the delta between the two of how they were.
Have you ever seen 80 spots being used at once?
Excuse me?
Have you ever seen 80 parking spots used at once? Because you're
Are you asking how many spaces are at their current facility or
Right,
this
at the
one?
current facility, have you ever seen 80
Okay,
spots in use?
I was referring to, I thought you meant this building, not their current facility. I don't have any information on that.
We have about 55 current parking spaces at 43 Sword Street.
Okay.
And as she said, it's, other than if we're having a big training day or a big cookout day, it's never even half full.
Thank you.
A lot of our business, they talked about 200 hits. A lot of our business is on our truck deliveries. That's not all counter hits. We run 3 trucks delivering product all over Central Mass. So that's, half of our business is not being done at our counters.
Right, so that would be, for example, you might have a truck with 7 deliveries on one truck in one day. So that's 7 hits that are going out the east side of the building instead of the west. I'm sorry, the west side of the building instead of the east. So that's part of the count as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes, please.
So, could you define a hit?
It's one invoice. Every hit
Okay.
is an invoice.
All right, so that's, okay, so that's what ratchets those numbers up that high, is a volume of business based on the
Yeah, we do 200
invoice.
slips a day, average, and that's in a busy season.
Okay.
In our not busy season, we might do 160, 170, but over half of that is on our trucks. It's
Okay,
not-
so I was making an appropriate assumption, so I was expecting, so hits or invoices doesn't
Yeah.
correlate directly to cars or people.
Yeah.
Okay, that's volume of business based
the
on
volume of
invoice.
business we do.
You can have multiple transactions, multiple invoices.
Yeah, you might have a
with
contractor coming, picking up on the east side, you might have a contractor coming pick up stuff for 3 projects that he's working on, and that would be 3 separate invoices.
Understand.
You know.
Okay, so that ratchets the volume of business, but not correlating to the amount of people and ebb and flow. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So I'd like to reiterate what Ms. Roach spoke about. I've frequented that business also several times. Contractors aren't really shopping. They're getting their pick list. They're going in and they're getting the equipment they need, and they're leaving immediately for the job site. They're not going to stroll around the showroom. They're not going to stroll around the warehouse. They know what they need. They're not making any money while they're in that area picking up the parts. They're going to the job site. So they really spend maybe 15 to 20 minutes tops at each interval to get their equipment. As far as the showroom goes, again, I've been in there. It is literally a showroom, so if they go in there, look at a kitchen sink or a bathroom sink or some fixtures, some people do carry the parts out, some people might buy a new bathroom sink or something like that, but a lot of the times it's referred to the contractor because they're doing the remodeling job at their house. So they'll actually pick out what they want, make the list, contractor comes in, picks it up, and brings it to the job. So, and again, at the current location, I've been there several times, I've never seen the parking lot overflowing or full. So, for what that's worth.
And to my knowledge, like a Home Depot or something, I don't think there's really ever like a big sale. If so, I missed it. Yeah, no, it's more like your contractor refers you there, you go in, you pick what you want, they write it down, you leave. It's not, and I've only always made it appointments. I didn't even know you could walk in, actually. It's a by appointment.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
In the winter, will you lose any parking with the snow? I mean, what do you do with the snow? Do you?
Well, we've been trying to, the planning board asked the same question. Right now, the operations are so tight down there with the various users using the common area that the 2 parties, Cadent and Webb, and Imperial before them work together to do snow removal. There are areas on some of the properties where snow storage can be put. I believe there's an area in the back of the Cadent property. I'm not sure if that's where all of it goes, but I'm sure you probably end up losing some spaces just because of the configuration. But once again, with the 11 extra, that shouldn't be an issue. But if it gets to the point where we have a snowstorm that is, a 24-inch snowstorm, and 2 days later we get an 18, and 3 days later we get a 26-inch again, at that point, some point in time, they have to do snow removal, and they need to do that to serve their customer base and get their employees in there. So it's incumbent upon them to keep up with it.
Thank you.
We currently do snow removal now. We have a contractor that comes and takes it out.
Any other questions?
Just one offer to our building commissioner. Caleb, any comments on this application?
No, I don't have any comments or concerns. The applicant did go before DCG, town engineer looked at it, fire department looked at it, and there's no concerns. I believe the proposed project will greatly reduce the amount of truck traffic that the building has seen, so I think that's a positive.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't have anything further, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anyone else? Do I have a motion to close the public portion of the hearing?
Motion to close?
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, do I have a motion on the application as it stands?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, so given that we have 2 applications, I would expect that we would take them separately.
Yes, so we'll go with, do I have a motion under section 3.2.7.1?
I'll make a motion to grant.
Second?
Mr. Chacolo?
Second.
Ms. Roach?
Aye.
And I also vote to approve. And the second vote would be under 6.2.3, relief from parking regulations. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to grant?
I'll second.
Mr. Chacolo? Ms. Roach?
Aye.
And I also approve. Good luck, gentlemen. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
So we can start the next hearing. We'll let them clear out.
I have to recuse myself.
So Ms. Roach will be recusing herself, excuse me, for the next 710 application. So that means Mr. Jones will be coming up and be your first vote. Congratulations. So we have a 7:10 PM applicant, Foggies LLC, requesting a special permit to allow a waiver of underlying requirements under Section 7.8 of the zoning bylaws to erect a freestanding sign on property located at 426 Packagug Street, Auburn, Mass. Map 33, parcel 30. Is the applicant present?
Yes. David Cortez for Foggy's Real Estate.
Thank you. So a motion to open the hearing.
Motion to open the hearing?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Could you just introduce yourself, please, and give us an overview of what you'd like to accomplish?
I will, thank you, and thank you for your time tonight. My name's David Cortez. I'm one-third of Foggy's Real Estate LLC. We recently purchased the property located at 426 to 428 Packagug Street here in town. My partners are Ms. Roach and Scott Wren, and the LLC is Foggy's Real Estate. We bought this almost a year ago, December 2017, from Mr. Neil Marr, who'd owned the property for 32 years. In its former life, it was a thriving real estate office, and it had much success here in the town. When we bought the building, it had been vacant for quite some time. We have the building occupied now. My law office is on the first floor. Roach and Wren is on the second floor. We have a residential tenant on the third floor. We're requesting a special permit waiver under Section 7.8 so that we can put up a freestanding sign on the property. I refer you to Section 935 of the bylaws that sets out the criteria. 935.1, the degree to which the activity, site plan, and building design are consistent with surrounding development. We feel that a freestanding sign is consistent with the overall surroundings. The building's technically located in the RA district, but if you are familiar with the location, this is the yellow building at the bottom of Packagug Street on the right, the last building before the railroad tracks. And it is across from another law office. It's across the street from the mall, and it generally has the appearance of being more of a business district in that particular closed-off area than a residential A area. We don't feel it'll affect the capability under 935.2 for the town to service the premises. There are already two curb cuts. There's a large parking lot on the lower, I think would be the south side of the building, and there's a parking area there, and there's quite a large curb cut. And the driveway curls around to the north side of the building where there's a more residential side curb cut. I'd say probably 14 to 18 feet there, and a driveway that goes around the north side of the building. So there's no difficulty with access of emergency vehicles or town vehicles or anything like that for any reason. Under 9353, we don't feel that there'd be any impact on any educational facilities. And as far as 9354, adjoining premises of sound, light, we're not going to illuminate the sign. It's not an electronic sign. It's just a wooden carved type sign. Moving on to 9355, as far as air or water pollution, topographical change, removal of trees, that's not applicable. We're not going to do anything at all that would affect any of that. 9356, the sign distance and traffic safety. We think the sign's going to increase safety with regard to traffic flow. The front of the building faces Packagug Street. The street numbers can be missed because the driveway comes before the building. Most of our customer base comes up from the bottom of Packagug Street, and the driveway or the parking lot that they'll be entering is actually before the building. So what we've had on a number of occasions is delivery trucks and our customers, our clients who come in, they actually go by the building before they see the number sign on the front of the building, and they'll go up and they'll have to turn around and come back down. We think this will alleviate that, and we'll have better visibility to our customers, our clients that are coming in, and they won't have to go and do that. 9357, environmental compatibility. We're located near a busy intersection. We have the mall and the other law office directly across the street. We think it'll improve the overall look. We certainly plan to maintain the sign where it meets the ground with some mulch and some flowers and things like that to improve the appearance. There wouldn't be any consequences at all, employment or fiscally wise, other than us paying for the sign, obviously. And as far as under 9359, consistent with the revised master plan, we think it's consistent. The town's looking to encourage business development. We're all very happy to be here. The other two members of the LLC are residents of the town. I, unfortunately, am not, but I'm very happy to be doing business here and contributing to the economy. We applied for a special permit for a freestanding sign rather than a wall-mounted sign. We feel the freestanding sign will help direct our clients to the driveway that are coming in both directions. We actually have the same problem with people coming down Packagug Street. There's a hedge there on the neighbor's property, and it makes it somewhat difficult. The building can kind of sneak up on you, so that if we have the sign out there, we feel it'll be easier for people to pull into the parking lot. Thanks for your consideration to the request, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Cussy?
I have no questions.
Mr. Chacolo?
I have no questions.
Mr. Maron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I don't have thank you for your brief. I appreciate it very much. I don't have a question, but just for the board's consideration, I believe that the prior business, that was Century 21 on this property, also had erected a standing sign in relatively the same proximity. And although I would just ask the board to consider, although this is an RA zone for this property, I think that there's a very smart argument relative to the street numbers, and that they are set back. The property that's across the street that's also an attorney's office, I believe there's no freestanding sign, it's on the building itself.
It is correct.
But that property, that building is much closer in proximity to the street and the frontage, where their property sets back quite a way. So I think that what's been proposed is a very smart argument. So I don't have any, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
He just answered my questions.
Okay, that's good. Again, I have no further questions. I think the sign is adequate for the area. It's not going to be lit at night. It's hand-carved. There won't be any rotating, moving parts, that kind of thing. Do we have any abutters present that would like to speak of this? Hearing none, seeing none. Do I have a motion to close the public portion of the hearing?
Motion to close public hearing.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Do I have a motion on the application?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay. Good luck, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay. And our final applicant for this evening, we'll let them vacate for a minute.
I have to admit, I had to look it up on Google to get the street view.
There you go. Good idea.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, before we begin the hearing, looks like we have a fair amount of abutters, or at least audience participation, and so maybe an announcement to remind them to sign in.
That's what I was going to ask, yes. That was my next.
Yep.
Yeah,
Start a list.
I had a lot of coffee today.
That's okay. I'm glad. I haven't, so you're covering me.
I'll just let you run with it.
Yeah.
So I can see,
My tooth
I'm
is
assuming the
really
remaining
needed
people
more
in the
than one.
audience are abutters for the next hearing, correct? So if we have a sign-in sheet, could you please jot down your name and address for us, please? We need to keep track of actually how many abutters came in. Okay. 7:20 PM applicant NJ Realty Trust requesting a variance to allow light vehicular sales under section 3.2.6.3 of the Auburn zoning bylaws on property located at 104 South Street, Auburn, Mass., map 57, parcel 53. The applicant clearly is present. If you just introduce yourself, sir, and give us an overview of what you'd like to accomplish. But first, can I have a motion to open the hearing?
Motion to open the hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Todd Broder from Fletcher Tilton, here representing the applicant, NJ Realty Trust. For the benefit of the folks in the audience, the plan is here in a colored-up fashion, but we brought some extra copies of the plan. I realize when abutter notifications go out, they simply get a bit of information and not necessarily the whole filing package. So if anybody would like a copy of the plan we'll be referring to, it's up on the desk here. Just briefly, the project team, Patrick McCarty is the project engineer, and he's handing out some of those colored up plans right now. And David Patrick's here from Patrick Motors. So the property's 104 South Street. But as I'm going to show you on the plan, what we're really going to be talking about is a chunk of land that's really behind the existing Patrick Motors dealership on Route 20. So you have, I believe, in your packet, a copy of the plan that we're displaying right now. So I'll point out a few of those, the features of the site. It's about 13.3 acres, and it's zoned Residence B, and it's also in the Aquifer 3 district. We're only here tonight to discuss with you the use variance because this is a residential district. This is not, this auto sales in this district is not a use that's permitted without a use variance. We have a road to go with this project. This is really a threshold issue of whether or not we can make this project work at this location. The site has not been fully designed in terms of all of the topography taken into consideration. The wetlands have not been officially flagged. The information that we're going with is sort of rough at this point. We'll need to make a stop at Conservation Commission and go through that process. We also need to come back to your board for a special permit in the Aquifer 3 for the auto sales and the zoning interpretation provided by the building inspector indicated as well. And then we'll be on to planning board. If the project continues in that fashion, we'll be on to planning board for site plan. So this is to come to you with the use variance request to see if auto sales can be compatible at this site. So on the frontage on South Street, you'll know that there's a single-family residence at that location and a couple of outbuildings, a garage and a shed. That building and that use will remain residential, and if Patrick can just point out, the plan is to create an A&R plan and bifurcate the parcel. It'll be, what's the acreage on it?
Hi, good evening. Patrick McCarty, McCarty Engineering, for the record. Approximately 4.2 acres of the 13 would remain zoned residential, and the existing house and structure would remain at the frontage of South Street. The remaining roughly 8 acres is the area which we're requesting the use variance to be allotted to.
So we'll take the lot and bifurcate it in that fashion. Part of the reason for that is there's a fairly substantial wetland area that we've identified that runs through that area of the property. So the property line would stay, would be essentially to the west of that wetland area, kind of cutting off the residential area from the commercial. There will be no access. The proposed inventory storage area that we'll talk about will not have any access from the back area of the land that we're utilizing out to South Street. That's not part of this project at all. We're not asking for anything to be commercially utilized on that 4-acre parcel that will remain. So I wanted to make that point up front. Excuse me. So you may recall a few months ago we were before you to talk about Patrick Motors and trying to bring a few of their dealerships that are currently in Worcester to Auburn on a site that's owned by Dartmouth College further down Route 20 as you go under the Mass Pike on your way to Worcester. There was a lot of due diligence done on that site, and there's tons of wetlands. There's a huge amount of fill that's necessary, more wetlands than we ever anticipated. So that project didn't end up being feasible on that site. It's unfortunate. I thought it was a great use for the site. It's been a long vacant parcel, but that project just isn't going to work there. So the Patrick family is still committed to bringing the dealerships to town. Has been looking for locations. 104 South Street became available, and they made a proposal to purchase that, and that's the stage that we're at right now. It's under contract with the owner, subject to us having success with our local permitting process. The idea here is that there would be, you may know it's a Volkswagen and it used to be Saab. Saab is really no longer. So the Saab would be replaced with one of the other manufacturers that would come from the Worcester location. So there would be 2 manufacturers on this site. There would be some work at some point to the showroom and the area out front, but that's all part of what's existing already. What we need is additional inventory parking, and that's what this proposal would provide. The proposal is to utilize the rear acreage to provide storage for about 300 vehicles. They're predominantly new vehicles, and they're stacked in a fashion that they take up, less space than your mall parking lot would, or something to that effect. So we've kept the footprint as small as possible in order to get those amount of spaces on site. But this is to allow the dealership to service those two manufacturers at this location. There would be another manufacturer still waiting to be placed, and we may have some good news on that in the near future. But this is what we're looking at right now, trying to utilize this existing site. The idea is to leave as much vegetated buffer as possible between ourselves and the residential neighbors. You'll see on one of the plans that's in front of you, we provided the distance between the edge of really what's the parking area, the inventory parking area that we're proposing, and the nearby residential homes. And the numbers may be difficult to read, but they're close to 700 feet, 800 feet, 750 plus feet, 700 feet, 800 plus feet to the nearest to the homes that are nearby. Again, we're going to leave as much vegetation on our site as possible. I think the footprint of what we proposed is small as compared to somebody trying to really maximize the site. That wasn't the goal here. The charge was we need 300 spaces, and so Patrick designed the site for 300 spaces, and it's a kind of a minimal design in that sense. There'll be low lighting in the back, so there won't be the big honking lights that you see on some of the other car dealerships on even up and down Route 20 in town. This is not really a customer area. This is more for those new car storage. The customers will remain up in the front portion and be serviced up there. This is for the dealership to have that inventory on hand so they can deliver a vehicle to a customer or show them the particular car, but this is not a customer area. There'll be some video surveillance capabilities back there, so the dealership will want to keep an eye on their product back there. So the safety factor, I think, is important, and it'll be under the guise of those cameras. We did meet with DCG a few months back, probably at this point, and we only had a few concerns. One was the fire department wanted full access around the vehicles. We had proposed an even smaller surface area back there, but we needed to get them around the outside of the stored vehicles back there. And we took into consideration the police department's comments about cameras, and we were okay with that anyway. So the DCG meeting was relatively positive. So again, we talked about this is the first step in our process. We'll need a special permit from this board for auto sales in the Aquifer 3. We'll be headed to site plan approval with planning board, and we'll need a Conservation Commission permit. So this is really just the issue of, can we utilize this site for this particular use? And so we didn't provide, Patrick's going to need to go back and drill down on drainage, and then we'll give you a list of, any hazardous materials that may be on site as is required under the special permit criteria in the aquifer. So those things we will all do in due course if the board were to grant this use variance. So I have submitted a memo in support of the application. I don't traditionally go through that with any level of detail, because I think when I'm sitting in my office drafting it, I'm probably better about thinking about it than I am when I'm speaking to you. But I'm happy to go through those criteria if necessary, and happy also to take any questions. Patrick's here to answer any questions about the site, and David Patrick's here to answer any questions about operations if there are any.
Okay.
Take those.
Thank you. So if it pleases the board, I would like to take the unusual step of opening the floor to the abutters first before we add our comments. It's usually what we do traditionally, anyway.
At your pleasure.
You fine with that?
I'd agree.
Okay. So, folks, for the abutters, whoever would like to speak, would like you to come up. We have to keep it orderly. If you have any questions that are directed to the applicant, you have to go through the chair. So you kind of have to speak to us first, and then they can come up and address your questions or concerns. And also for the record, I did receive a submitted letter this evening at the beginning of the meeting from Mr. Paul Marone, pretty specifically stating that he is not in favor of the project. And today, we received a last-minute letter from Mr. Ed Saucier, who was also, I believe, at 120 South Street, if I hope that's correct, also opposing the project. I just want to go on record and make sure if anybody wants to see those letters, they're available at the Code Enforcement Office for viewing. So if we just have you come up one at a time, introduce yourself, give us your name and address, and state your concerns.
Thank you. My name is Linda Boycell. I live at 122 South Street. I'm one of the property owners there. From what I've been able to see and understand is that in the zoning bylaws, there is a zoning map. And this land on 104 South Street is in RB, which is residential B zone. There's also in the zoning bylaws a provisions table of principal uses and a principal use definition table, which states that in various zones, a use is prohibited in any district under which it is donated by the letter N. This provision, the use stated in this application, the section 3.2.6.3, to allow for the expansion of light vehicular sales operation, is donated by the letter N in this residential B zone. N means no. There is no with SP, meaning special permit allowed. There is no with SPA approval, which means a permitted site plan approval. It just says N, meaning no. This meeting tonight has been called for zoning variance on a piece of property that is zoned as residential, that has always been zoned as residential, that does not permit special permits or permit changes with site plan approvals. But everyone does have the right to ask for a variance. This variance, however, provides no public purpose. There is no public need for this variance. There is no benefit to the general welfare of this neighborhood or the town, for that matter. This variance is at odds with the town's master plan and the current zoning restrictions. In fact, it concerns me that it may violate the structural integrity of the zoning system. As residents of this town, we have the right to rely on existing zoning regulations and the right to protection from adverse events, as there was no way we could anticipate these zoning changes when we purchased our homes. In fact, this process of singling out a small parcel of land for a use classification different from the area that it's located in, to the benefit of the owner and to the detriment of others, smacks of spot zoning to me. You are singling out a property for different treatment for the benefit of this business alone. The properties to the east and west of this business have successfully remained within the highway zoning fields. In fact, the dealerships on Route 20, when needing extra storage space, have purchased additional highway business zone properties and shuttled their cars when needed. So why the different treatment for this business? Of course, at 122 South Street, I am an abutter, with certainly, and I will certainly experience adverse effects on my property, including a negative effect on my home value. You know, being bordered by a residential property and a conservation property is much more valuable than being bordered by a highway business property on two sides. But it also affects the neighborhood. This application mentions several times that the significant grade differences, however, they do not mention that the grade on parking lot number 2 is significantly higher than all of the surrounding grades in the neighborhood, including the height of, yes, my house, but also the Brookfield Living Center. Add that to the height of the lighting poles, and there is no way that we will not have significant adverse lighting pollution in what is now a serene, peaceful neighborhood setting. This is an adverse event for all of us. There are hundreds of scientific papers detailing the detrimental effects to insects, wildlife, and humans when the night sky is brightened, even to the smallest extent, by artificial lighting. This application also mentioned several times the large vegetative buffers. It's obvious that nobody has walked this land. The trees are close to 100 years old and tall by nature, as well as deciduous, and that means the leaves fall off. Only the beautiful but tall pines retain their greenery, but I'm assuming they will be cut down since they sit on parking lot number 1. And by the way, I want everyone to realize here that we are talking about removing the trees from 2 football field-size areas. The majority of the vegetation is high canopy, low underbrush with no mid-height foliage. There is no way that 2 football field-size areas of lighting and the views of 300 cars and the glare off of those 300 cars will be hidden from view in this neighborhood. The foliage fails to do it now. And I don't want to forget to mention these trees and the vegetation which currently exists buffer the noise that we hear from the 2 highways and Route 20. Poorly at best, and now this variance wants to take a good portion of them away and add to the noise pollution in this neighborhood. In addition, if the object of this request is to increase sales, there will be an attendant increase in the driving of test vehicles down South Street, which already bears the brunt of traffic changes made in the past year or so on South Oxford Street. So let me repeat. As residents of this town, we have the right to rely on existing zoning regulations and the right to be protected from adverse events. And as there was no way we could have anticipated these zoning changes when we purchased our homes. So please, live up to the promise to preserve the integrity of our neighborhoods. Stop these variance requests. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Joe Chanette, and I live at 129 South Street, and I've lived there for over 40 years. As my neighbor said, specifically 3.2.63 does not allow for this. And it's not consistent with what the other businesses and towns have done. When Herb Chapman's needed an additional lot, they bought property not contiguous to their dealership for their overflow. Same way with the Butera Nissan. Same way with the Acura dealer. Okay, but this applicant is seeking preferential treatment so they can have theirs, okay, in a zone that is not zoned for highway business. The intended use or purpose of this, okay, is for residential use, not highway business. It may be suited for commercial, but is not zoned for that purpose. Although the residents benefit if the existing large vegetation is significantly removed in part by this plan, okay, it's not going to get any better. Highway business, okay, we understand that the dealerships have got a right to run their business, okay, and we understand that. We also understand that we have to listen to their trash at 5 a.m. being picked up. We have to listen, okay, to their parts being called, their salesmen being called over intercoms. That's highway business. We understand that. We also understand, okay, when the fire trucks come, many times every day, coming up South Street, they ask for the intersection on their way to Brookfield East and West. We understand that. That's all part of highway business. But to expand it, to give a dealership that is only suited for one dealership, okay, increase area so they can get the second dealership to get only more test car drivers down South Street, okay? I mean, there are already enough traffic on South Street that where the drivers aren't very attentive to add even more. As I see it, the only hardship is that the existing dealership is not adequate for their expansion of their business plan. It's only a hardship to the expansion. The existing facility is not adequate for 2 dealerships. The land is not landlocked as claimed in the proposal, okay? There is a cart path that goes from South Street that goes all the way through that back access. It may not be able to support a motor vehicle, okay? And that land has served for well over 40 years as the natural buffer in the residential area, protecting the other residents in town. And I'm sure that's why the existing owners had kept it that way, okay? Because it was a natural buffer that was maintained at their expense. The visual noise is significant. Okay, if you're not sure, bring your newspaper and come on over any night. Okay, especially now that these trees are starting to lose their leaves. Okay, there is significant light noise. Okay, and of course, with light noise, because the trees lose their leaves, okay, we get hearing all of the street traffic. Fact is, highway business don't make nice neighbors. Okay, they're great for the town, and we support them. Okay, but we asked for equal protection under the zoning bylaws. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Hi, Randy Weber, 123 South Street. I'm right across from Paul and Linda. I won't repeat everything that was said about the noise and the lighting. I agree with that. And a lot of what Paul is going to see or hear, we're going to have the same thing. But what is probably the biggest concern of mine, and I get any business, I support any business in trying to expand. I understand that. By adding that inventory there, you're going to increase what was talked about, the test drives down South Street. On any given day out there, actually, I think Paul's driveway's been destroyed by the front of it, by most of those. It's a primary spot where they stop, and they get out, they'll either switch, husband and wife or whatever will switch, and the other one will drive, or they'll turn around and pull in the driveway and turn around, whether it's at Ed and Kelly's, which is just before Paul's, or at Paul's. Bottom of his driveway at the road the tar is all a mess. The rest of his driveway is fine. And that's inside the plow line. So that's not from being plowed or anything else. That's from people turning their tires on a vehicle that isn't moving. Obviously, over time, that does damage. So there's a lot of kids that are now on that street, very young kids, school buses and things. I just don't think it's already enough accidents on that street. People drive fast already there. I think adding more volume to that road would be a very bad thing to do. I don't think it can handle what it has now. But I reiterate the rest as far as we'll see that light. There's no way around seeing that light. That'll be a huge night light to that whole neighborhood. As Linda mentioned, it's a residential neighborhood. If you never know what can happen down the future, but changing that would not give us the consideration of the value that when we purchased our home, knowing that was a residential. Be fine if a house goes in there, if it could. But this is talking of business with the light, illumination, noise, and again, the safety concern that I have with the traffic on South Street. So I do think that has a material impact to the valuations along South Street in that area. So, thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, seeing none. I'm going to close the portion of the public hearing for for comments at this point. I'm going to turn it over to the board for any comments they may have. Mr. Cussy?
I have no comments on it right now.
Okay. Mr. Chacolo?
Right as it, I'll wait till they,
Sorry.
it's quite all right. As things exist right now, with 104 that you're proposing, who are there two separate lots right now?
No.
So all of the area where you propose to do the work, all of that area belongs to 104?
Correct.
Now, I noticed behind the area, after the green shading that I have on my, you are not going to be considering it a building lot, but it's going to be combined with the applicant's land at 519.
Correct.
So is that part of this 13.3 acres that you're talking about?
Is what part?
I can answer.
Where you have said the area behind.
Yes.
So the area that you're talking about as far as a separate lot, is that bound by the dotted heavy black line?
Yes.
And that's it?
So I highlighted this plan. This is the A&R plan that the planning board endorsed back in February. So the yellow outline is the entire 13-acre parcel that is currently under agreement by the applicant for purchase. The green line that's highlighted here represents the division between what would stay residential, the 4.2 acres at the frontage on South Street that would stay residential, and the roughly 8-acre parcel. So we would go back to the planning board, if this process moved forward, we would go back to the planning board with another A&R plan to create this line. This would stay as a single-family house lot. This piece would be combined with the dealership land on Washington Street.
So if all of this land is one parcel, you plan to subdivide and keep one lot?
Right.
Now, will you merge, yes, that's the one I have. Will you be merging the remaining parcel with 519 Washington Street?
Yes.
So that will be one lot?
One lot with frontage on Washington Street only.
And that's it?
That's it.
Can you point to me on that map where the closest residential piece of property would be to the remaining parcel?
The houses or the lots?
No, the closest residential house.
The closest residential house is 577 feet, which is this house here.
577 feet.
Yeah, and
What would be between that house and the parking lot would be wetland?
Yes, so...
All, as they mentioned?
I did go out and walk the property.
Yeah.
So I had the record engineering plans from when the dealership was built. I had Town of Auburn GIS data and also Mass GIS data that we compiled to prepare this plan. So then I went out and walked and field checked that and then overlaid it with an aerial photo so that we could roughly approximate where people have lawn in their backyard versus where they have trees in their backyard. So the dark green is forested. The medium green is a wetland, which is also forested. So this is the existing tree line. So you have this area here that's trees, wetland, additional trees. So anything that's dark green is forest to remain, and the medium green is wetland that would obviously remain. I just color it a different color so it's identified as a wetland rather than just strictly forest.
Okay, I'm also very interested in the comment that was made regarding sound. And you know car dealerships, there's a loudspeaker and they're looking for somebody to come into the showroom for a customer, whatever it is.
Right.
That I'm really interested in.
Okay,
'Cause that carries a long way. When you take the leaves
Understood.
off of trees, it's going to carry even further.
Understood. So two additional things I'd like to point out to the board is we're proposing to fully enclose this area with a stockade fence, which is indicated on the plan as the line with the squares. So that fence would surround the whole perimeter of this proposed parking area. The lights would be low lights. We don't want 16-foot tall poles.
How high is low?
8 to 10 feet.
How high is the fence?
We could do an 8-foot stockade fence.
And 8-foot lights, so there'd be no dispersion
We can also
of light?
shield the lights, and as Todd indicated, this would go through planning board, and we'd have to put a photometric plan together at that time. The other important thing to note is that we're not proposing any customer access to this area. The intention of this area is to store the vehicles, so if somebody comes in and says to their salesman, I want a black Jetta with gray inside, he can say, oh, that's in the back lot, I'll go get it for you, and bring it out to the showroom area, the parking around the showroom area. We're not going to say, it's out back, go look for it. We're going to send an employee out to get the car and bring it forward to them.
So there'd be no customers in that area?
No customers in the area, no loudspeakers in the area, no paging system in the area.
Sales work of any kind
No
would
sales
be
work
done
in
from
the
that
area. They're not going to say, hey, let's go for a walk, we'll go check out the car.
Okay.
We'll do laps around that area. No, the
No
salesman.
sales work of any kind
No
would be
sales
done
work.
from
No,
that area?
he's going to bring the car out to them at the showroom.
Okay, that, Mr. Chairman, I may come back, but that's all I have for right now.
Thank you. Mr. Maron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good evening, Mr. Broder. It's good to see you again. A quick question on the diagram up here. So one of the items that was raised by thoughtful comments from the neighborhood was the elevation of that second, of that second lot, the one more rear to the site. Thank you, yes. So just tell me, and I'm not seeing a lot of, I mean, I see some centric circles, but I'm not seeing a lot of detailed topographical information. So just talk to me about the elevation and proximity to kind of ground level of the dealership, and if those parcels that are going to be developed for car storage are staged in different elevations?
Sure.
And how that might translate to the neighborhood.
Sure, I'll let Patrick answer it a little more fully, but I think the reference that I was making, and maybe it was inartfully done, I'm not sure, but was that the elevation difference between these lots and Eddy Pond, the residences at Eddy Pond, there is a significant grade difference there in terms of, in terms of elevation. So my reference was to that, not necessarily towards this direction.
Okay, no, and that's fair, and I appreciate that comparison. But if you could just address that, and maybe for myself, the board members and the neighborhood, what that elevation looks like. Thank you. And for transparency, I mean, the genesis of my question is, how is that going to affect visual effects and vegetation that you're planning based on proximity to the areas?
Sure, thank you. So currently there's a driveway that comes down the side of the existing dealership, and then there's parking area here. If you step off that curb, you actually go down 8 or 10 feet, rough, in round numbers. We would need to fill that in order to drive onto that, right? We're not going to drive down 14 feet. So we would fill in level with that lot. And then by the time you get to this end, you're roughly, say, 2 feet, 4 feet most above the elevation of the parking lot at the back of the dealership. And then it climbs up about 8 feet more to the upper parking lot.
Okay.
So generally, the lower lot's relatively at the same elevation as the dealership. It's going to be slightly pitched downhill to that blue area we're representing a detention basin. And then the upper lot, we would ramp up, say, 8 or so feet between the two lots.
Okay, and you may not be able to, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
The wetland area is the low point. It gently slopes up From here, slopes up and then drops significantly down to the Eddy Pond. Eddy Pond.
Okay. And you may or may not be able to answer this, but, so, and I appreciate that, because in looking at the lot, that gives me a sense of where you go, if you go up 8 feet. Can you compare that to the closest lying abutter, and what that line of sight might look like from an elevation perspective?
Again, this is Mass GIS data, but essentially, if you're at elevation 0 at the parking lot, you go down to -10 at the wetlands, and then back up approximately to 10 at those houses, and then down to South Street. So it's a relatively flat.
So it's, okay, so it's elevation neutral?
Pretty much. It goes down, obviously, to the wetland, and then back up to the houses.
Same level in proximity to the closest neighbor?
Yep.
Okay, on that level. Okay, sorry, and I know I put you through that, but I appreciate longer time, the way to get there.
No
The only
problem.
other question I have is that back, if I may call it the back lot that we were discussing, and I know it's white area and it's not mapped out, but what's behind there?
That's
And I
actually,
couldn't see it, I mean, it's
that's
all
Town of
wooded. but
That's Town of Auburn conservation land.
That's all conservation land that goes
That's
back?
all forested conservation land.
So as you've described, those are the closest residential houses?
That's correct.
In any direction?
That's correct.
On that one side?
That's correct. And if I may, David Patrick's here with us this evening. He just pointed out to me that they actually don't have a paging system at their dealership, so that's potentially from another abutter on Washington Street, and that they'd also be willing to explore an alternate test drive route, because hearing the concerns, it's, meetings like this is where some of this stuff comes up that they may not know operationally unless somebody came in the dealership and said, hey, please stop turning around in my driveway. So that's a good thing that came out of tonight's meeting, is that that's something we can look at, because we want to be good neighbors. And, they've been in town for a long time, and they're looking to bring two new dealerships to town. So they want to be good to their neighbors and good to the town, so.
Thank you very much for your comments. I appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, I don't have any further questions at this time, but it has been, I think, in the last comments of the applicant, we may give, if we may, at some point in time, the applicant an opportunity to address any of the significant concerns in total that have been raised by the abutters, to see if there's anything that they want to comment directly. They've commented on a few of them already. I don't want to detract from other board members speaking, so we should move on there. But just as we've done in the past, perhaps the applicant can address any of the specific concerns been raised by the neighborhood.
Thank you. Ms. Roach?
So, on the other side of the site, where the Eddy Pond Lodge is, I don't see any numbers. Do you have an estimate of how far it is on that side from the development, from the new site, I guess?
I don't think we actually did an estimate on that.
Farther than the residential? On the other side?
I wouldn't think so. I think it's right next to, so if, the Patrick Motors, and then there's the 10,000 and under dealer there, and then it's the entrance to the residences there. I'm not sure exactly where the buildings are. We didn't show it, though, and we didn't specifically go there just because of the significant elevation difference there.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, in answer to Ms. Roach's question, there's another business on the other side of Patrick Motors.
Before, right.
Before you get to Eddy Pond, there is a significant distance from the edge of Patrick Motors to the beginning of Brookdale, the upper building, Brookdale West it is. Significant distance.
Lux Auto sits between the two properties.
That is correct.
However, the 8-acre lot does abut the Brookdale assisted living
In the
facility
back.
property.
Back,
In the
right.
back.
Not being developed, though.
But the lower
It
left
is.
parking lot would be next
Right.
to the assisted living lot.
Right, the front doesn't,
This property line is common.
yes, between the Eddy
That's
Pond
Lux Auto?
and the, no,
Lux
that's,
Auto's here, we wrap
Right.
on the back of Lux Auto.
right, it's in the back. Okay.
So how much further are you going beyond the lot you have now?
So it goes, this new lot, I'll call it, wraps around the back of Lux Auto and directly abuts with the property.
Wraps around the back of them, okay.
Correct. But we're not going, anywhere near the lot lines purposefully. I mean, you can see the design is, we could have proposed, a huge parking field back there and,
Brookdale has a significant amount of land on, till they reach their lot line also, and it is heavy vegetation there.
Okay, so one of my other questions would be, is it necessary to light these both parking lots 24/7?
Not 24/7, I don't think there's a need for that. Quite honestly, what we talked about in DCG, we had made a suggestion, and I'll have to refer to notes somewhere, but the police department was actually pushing us to light it for a longer period of time. They're more concerned about vandalism or theft or whatnot. So there's zero intent to have this huge, a glow of light coming from this area that doesn't serve the dealership's purposes at all. This is not a display area for public purposes. This is only storage area for the dealership. So, there's no need for us from a dealership perspective to make this thing light up like a Christmas tree. There's no reason for it, and we wouldn't do that.
If I may, back to the previous question, I just measured, it's 150 feet from the proposed stockade fence to our property line that's common with Eddie Pond. So there's 150 feet of trees, and then
it
down,
goes
I would
down.
guess 80 feet if I had to guess, in elevation down to them.
Before the next one. Okay.
If I might, Mr. Chairman. It looks like you have two entrances, two means of entrances to both of the proposed parking lots. Is there any kind of a locking gate that is proposed, which would reduce the need for lighting?
Yeah, we wouldn't object to that. We hadn't thought of that, but I think that's a good suggestion.
Sliding locking gate.
So good point with the two entrances. That's also something that came up in DCG, was the fire chief was concerned, deputy chief?
I think it was the captain.
Captain, sorry. The captain was concerned that if there was a fire in the car that's parked here, electrical short, and the car catches on fire, he wanted access for an emergency vehicle to be able to come in. So one of the things that came out of that was we made the radiuses larger to allow for that emergency vehicle traffic. We're proposing a fire hydrant, extend a water line and put a fire hydrant so it's within 500 feet of all those cars. And we actually added this back driveway. Originally, these were just all backed in. All the vehicles were backed in, and he said, no, what if that car's on fire? I'm climbing over 3 cars to get to it, to put it out. And of course, he said to Mr. Patrick, Neil Patrick, the father, was there, and he said, we want to make sure we save your inventory before it all burns away. So that was a good suggestion for him. That's why the footprint did expand a little bit from our initial concept
The
plan.
previously mentioned issue of light and that reflecting off of vehicles and so forth, during the day, there's not going to be a need to light it.
That's correct.
But a locking gate, the lighting is for security purposes.
That's it.
So a locking gate would reduce the need for that at night, where you lock it at night, open it up in the morning.
Yeah, as Mr. Patrick just indicated to me too, we could also consider motion-activated lights that only turn on if somebody's out there wandering around.
So David Patrick, for the record. So we had a similar issue in Shrewsbury, and we put the lights on a timing system set up by the board, hours that the lights could turn on and off. So, more for safety than theft, we need the lights. So the lights could operate till, I think at our Shrewsbury location, till 10 p.m., and then we'd have a couple safety lights, low-level lights, some low-level LEDs that would just maintain on. So we don't need high lighting.
You're saying that hours of operation Are they only,
Well, when it gets dark in this time of season, from 5:30 till 10 PM, some type of lighting system, and then we could have that shut off on either motion or timers, and just some low-level lights to be safe for the night.
thank you. Mr. Chairman, I noticed that while we're talking here, there's a lot of hands I've seen in the audience. I'd like, not to go back and forth all night, but I'd like to hear from the abutters again,
Yes.
if we can.
I planned on giving them a second opportunity once they're
Thank you
we're
very
finished with
much.
that line of questioning.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Mr. Jones?
Yes, just to be clear, you suggested that there wasn't much of an elevation difference between the higher of these two proposed lots and the houses nearby. What do you believe the elevation difference is between the higher lot and the neighboring houses?
Let me just make sure I understand your question. You're referring to this as the higher lot?
I think that's the higher one, I'm not sure.
I think it's the back one.
And in general, your question is vis-à-vis these neighbors?
Yes, because they expressed considerable concerns about potential for light pollution after hours.
Sure.
And the elevation, for that reason, seems like it could be a significant issue.
It's hard because it's not a linear topography from one to the other. But roughly from this parking lot elevation to this house, this could be 14 to 16 feet higher than that house.
Parking lot.
It's like being on a mountain.
And
That being said, that's 780 feet. It's 14 to 16 feet over 780 feet away.
Okay, and the assisted living facility is higher in elevation?
No, probably 80 feet, guessing, 60 to 80 feet lower than us. Because as soon as you pass Lux Auto, Route 20 really dives down to get to 290.
And close to the water over there?
Yeah, and they're down there.
Change that.
Okay. So, to be clear, for light pollution mitigation, you've mentioned having the fences and the lights being similar height. You've mentioned low-level LEDs and motion activation.
Timers.
Or a timer.
Is there any other light pollution mitigation that you're considering?
Shielded lights. So that they're dark sky, they're only aimed down, not up.
Do you have any idea how much of the light might escape?
So whenever you put together a photometric plan, when you submit to planning board for site plan approval, for really any type of project that we're designing and permitting, you submit a photometric plan, and you're always looking for 0-foot candle at your property line. So that's what our lighting designer would design to, so that, at the lights themselves would be the highest foot candle, and then, they're not quite a circular, they're kind of bulbish from the head out into the parking area, and so as you get further and further away, that lighting level diminishes. And so you'd want to see indicated on the photometric plan a bunch of zeros at the property lines, which is demonstrating that there's not light pollution going over the boundary to the abutters.
No further questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mr. Jones mined out an item that, at the risk of covering ground twice, that I thought I was clear on, and now I'm not. So you have one of these lots higher than the other.
Correct.
And this isn't a trap, so I'll just say that up front.
Sure.
But from my own understanding, when my line of questioning earlier was that you're higher, what I was trying to ascertain was, your higher lot, how is that in elevation proximity to the closest neighbor? And I understood that to be neutral, but I understand that the response just a few moments ago was, in fact, we were looking at a delta of about 14 feet plus?
Yes.
So please walk me through that.
Sorry, I
don't be
think we
sorry, 'cause
misunderstood
I might have-
each other.
but-
I was speaking initially relative to the existing dealership.
Okay.
I'm sorry, probably too close to that. So we're relatively elevation neutral, slightly climbing to provide for stormwater runoff towards the detention basin, and then we climb again to this upper, as the land gently slopes from the wetland all the way up to the property line and then drops down. So we'd want to match that topography as much as we can to minimize the amount of off-grading, which minimizes the amount of tree clearing.
So if I may, in plain speak, so that second lot that's higher, those neighbors, granted, and you've covered the distance, but granted, they're looking up at that lot.
They're looking up at a lot 780 feet away.
That's at least 14 feet above them.
Yep.
Okay. All right, Mr. Jones, thank you for covering that, because it may have been in the way that I presented the question. We were starting at the dealership, but my purpose was to really nail down what that elevation delta was going to be. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else from the board?
Yeah. So when you add that parcel of land to the dealership, that still stays residential, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, so that lot that you're going to put your
It doesn't
parking
change
lots
the
on,
underlying,
residential.
it doesn't change the underlying zoning. The zone line still is where it is, which actually is here. And the use variance would only cover that rear parcel, not the front parcel.
That property on the east has a driveway running up to a single-family home that runs right up against the Fuller's lot.
Here.
Just a question, is there any plans
It's a
for...
cart path, right?
No, there's a house there.
There's a
That was my
house there.
question. Is there any plans for the existing house structure?
Stay residential.
And there's a driveway up to it, and then there's a cart path that goes along the back of their property, I believe.
Right, but as far as residential development of the back land, you'd have to go through the buffer zone, go through the no-touch zone, go through the wetland itself, back through those same zones on the other side. I think that would be a difficult permitting effort at best with conservation. The access, the most practical access to this rear land is through either the Patrick Motors property or Lux Auto, as there's no wetland barrier. There is a potential vernal pool, it's not a mapped vernal pool, indicated on the MassGIS website, which is this little egg-shaped area here, that we show all the buffer zones to that as well.
So I've walked back there, and being as high as you are, I mean, the noise and the lighting, it's going to be real tough on the neighbors. I mean, it's a lot of pressure on the neighbors. That's way high. When you walk in there, it's
Yeah, I think it's...
higher than houses, you know, the sound's going to carry unbelievable, especially when the leaves are down. I mean, it's...
Right. And I think, I think that you're equating the noise of the dealership and the operations of Route 20, where this would be only a single employee going out to get a vehicle and then bringing it out. We're not intending to bring anybody out there to demonstrate the car or look at a car. It's a minimal, I want the black Jetta, salesman goes out and gets it, drives it out front.
You'll be
So
bringing cars in and out when they're
Yep.
dropping off loads of cars. There'll be a lot of action back there. You know, we see the car dealerships in town, and they're busy.
Sure.
It's a residential zone.
Okay, so in the interest of keeping the hearing moving forward, I'd like to have the applicant rest for a moment. We're going to bring it back to the abutters that have some new concerns, but I also want to point out to the board, if you could turn your manuals, your zoning bylaw books to page 9 and take a look at 3.2.6.3, just for reference, while we allow the abutters to speak again. Ma'am, I saw that you had your hand up. Would you like to continue with that conversation?
I have been at 122 South Street for 30 years now, so we have had many occurrences with these car dealerships in this highway zone over time. I don't remember if any of you were on the board back then, but we had various discussions with Patrick Motors about not driving down South Street years ago when they opened up. We had various discussions about the light levels, all right? These low light level things with the shields on them, the first winter, the shields are gone, and they're not replaced, okay? I myself suggested that they put a gate because it went from shut your lights off a half hour after the business closes to, oh, we can have security lights now. So I suggested putting a gate across the entrance to Patrick Motors. And nope, we have to do it because they're looking for people who are stealing the tires, scratching the cars, stealing whatever they can off of the cars. Which brings another instance to mind is now, because you tell me that the police have issues with the cars being stolen or the tires being stolen, you are now bringing more crime. You're bringing crime to my backyard. In addition to which, this plan here, this is our home. It's not detailing that this is all pasture. This is open land. There's no trees here, right? It's a buffer to the water. Just wanted to say that. What else was saying? The driving, we already suggested a gate, all of these things that we try to work out with Patrick Motors in the past. 6 months later, they were driving down South Street again, no matter what they said, okay? That's it. Oh, the zoning, if you open to Google Earth on your computers, this second parking lot here is 627 feet above sea level. If you add on another 10, 15 feet for the lights, our property down here at the highest point, which is at the house, is only 616 feet above sea level. So they will tower over us. And the other thing with the lights, no matter, there is no light there now, except from what we see from Patrick Motors and the other, and Fuller and the other companies. You're just going to increase that. The light doesn't disappear. No matter how low light level there is, it will bring more light to this area. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Again, just a couple of things. I do also agree. I got concerned when I heard the police department's concern, which, if they have a concern, and we're talking low-level lighting, right, and it may be 8 feet or same height as the fence itself, how much lighting do you have to put and install or for around 300 cars so you actually can see the cars? Probably quite a few. So you're going to have them higher than 8 feet, most likely, to make it any sense. If you don't have them higher than that and you have to put all these in, that's more light. It's going to carry. The other thing, too, is if there is a concern from the police, and this does actually occur, you're going to want more security, which is usually brighter lights, cameras. I would assume that, I don't know, but I assume there's cameras that will be installed in the back lot. I think I heard something about that. So if we have cameras, now that brings into another concern, really for Paul and Linda, quite frankly. HD cameras today are incredible. No matter which direction you go, you're going to have to shoot cameras in all directions to catch all the vehicles if you want to protect those vehicles. If you're going to do that, in foliage is down, or this clearing area, you're going to have a direct shot into their house. And it's not me, but I wouldn't like that. I didn't, that's that's something you don't know who's operating cameras, how they're working them, where they're installed, and what they're looking at. So I think that's a significant issue. And some of these things you won't, even if you say you don't do today, it doesn't mean you can't ask later. And if there is an increased incidence of crime, well, obviously the Auburn Police Department are going to have that concern and going to ask for those things. So I think there's some things that today we could say, well, we'll do this, but that doesn't mean you can't come back and ask for something else. So the other question I had was the lot that they're saying that is being said is going to remain residential. Is that 104, I believe? So if that remains residential, and I'm not an engineer, I don't know any of those things, as far as where and how you can build. But it doesn't mean down the road that the applicant can't ask for a variance and take down 104 and look for an entrance there. Whether that makes business sense or not, I can't answer that. It may make no sense whatsoever. But there's the potential for access now, additional access to South Street, and I'm not in favor of that. I don't think that makes business sense, quite frankly, and I'm giving an argument in their case. But again, I've always thought future. If you look back in years on something, and at the time it was going to be this, 20 years later, it doesn't usually look the same. And these could be great owners today, but if they decided to sell and a different ownership came in that didn't care, you have to deal with that at that point. Or there's a change in the business because the zoning's been changed. So there's all these things that are hard to predict, but you open it up by changing what is today a residential area. And I moved into a residential area with known buffers, and that's what I would prefer to keep. I don't think it's a proper thing to change residential zoning. I think that's all I had there. And the test drives, I do appreciate the offer for that, but we all know if a salesman's not going with them, people are going to drive wherever they want to drive. And that's just, you can put a sign, you can put anything. Unfortunately, to enforce that, I appreciate, the thoughtfulness of that, but I think it's an impractical thing to think would actually occur. So,
thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
We've addressed our concerns about the light pollution coming from the businesses that are on Washington Street. Okay? The lights that's being generated from those businesses. Now we're asking, or they're asking, to 2 football field lots closer with additional lighting. So in fact, we're going to have more lighting. One of the lots, okay, if you go up on Google Earth and you look, from that lot, it's all downhill. Okay, not only is it downhill, it's downhill across wetlands. There are no tall trees in the swamps. So the light from those and the blocking of the existing vegetation that's going to be cleared, okay, you add them all up, it's all cumulative, okay, bring your newspaper, okay, you're going to be able to read it, okay. As far as the test drives, sales said they wouldn't do it. As time went on, they did it. Recall on a complaint, oh, it's not sales, it's service. Okay, I get it. It's highway business. It's really uncontrollable. Okay, and we went through code enforcement about that. Went through code enforcement about the lighting. Oh, we'll turn them off at 2. Well, they don't turn them off at 2. Okay, and I understand they have a right to protect their inventory. I get that. Okay, and I understand they have a right to run their highway business. They're there, I get that. But this is residential, and I get that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we've heard a majority of the concerns. Many of them have been repeated, so I think we understand the impact of the concern. Yes, sir. Last one.
That's a short one. I've just got two things. I'd like to know if anybody on this board would like to come up to my house at nighttime in the winter and see the lighting that's there now. That's my first thing. My second...
Gonna have dinner?
We'll get you some
If we
beer.
could do dinner, I might take you up on that.
How about beer?
I could do that too, even, yeah, absolutely.
The other thing is, if we draft a collective response to everything we talked about tonight, because we covered a real lot of ground, would the board accept it as a position letter?
Well, we're gonna either make our decision tonight. I don't see any reason why that we would continue this to another hearing unless something else comes up. I don't honestly think it was really necessary. If you'd like to submit it, you certainly are more welcome to afterward, but it's really gonna be after the fact.
I get it.
So I think the board has heard the concerns, and I think we've taken them into consideration.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for
One
your time,
last
sir.
thing. They talk about a stockade fence, but the last time I was out there, the stockade fence that's there now is on the ground. So they don't maintain it.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. So my only question is to Caleb, actually. I'm curious if you could maybe touch on what the town's position is when they accepted the application for this.
Any applicant has the ability to apply for a variance. I don't know that the town has a position on this.
Okay.
They did go, I think they did go to DCG with a conceptual plan. I don't think they put a lot into the plans because this is kind of the first step in the process, as Todd said. So the stormwater, the air pollution, sound pollution, I don't think it's really been looked at yet.
Right. Okay. Well, again, just because the reason I'm concerned here is that, again, looking at page 9 on our table of uses, and it goes specifically there, light vehicle equipment sales, 3.2.6.3, for a residential business zone, it's clearly no. And that's something that we actually cannot change. As a board, we don't have the authority to spot zone. It's completely illegal, and we have to abide by the rules and regulations in our table of uses. Just to point that out.
Through the chair, if I may. I respectfully disagree. You do have the ability to issue a variance.
Okay.
It's not spot zoning per se. It's the landowner has the ability to request a variance for dimensional or the use. And they're
I'm sorry, dimensional or what use?
Or the use.
Oh, okay.
This would be a use variance. They do have the ability to do that, just like any residential neighbor would have the ability to apply for a variance if they wanted to put a business on their property. That
Okay.
doesn't mean the board has to approve it, it's just, but it is their right.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you. Any other further comments or concerns, questions?
My thought is, I don't see a hardship here for a variance
Okay.
in any way, shape, or form.
Go on the table one more time, Mr. Chacolo.
No more questions.
No more questions, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Roach?
I'm good.
Mr. Jones?
No more questions.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so to be clear, I want to grab my front page here. There we go.
Yep.
That's okay. So do I have a motion for the application for the 7:20 PM time slot for the NJ Realty Trust requesting a variance to allow a light vehicle sales under section 3263 of the zoning bylaws?
I'll make a motion to deny.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Maron, I'm going to do a roll call vote.
Deny.
Ms. Roach?
I'm going to have to deny too. If it wasn't residential, I would be on board, but we can't. We have to listen to the neighbors. It's residential. I'm a no.
And I'm going to make a motion to deny as well. I appreciate that. I think one of the things that the board does, we try to vigorously support our business districts, but I think we have to maintain the integrity of our neighborhoods and respect our residents as well, and I think in this case, we made the right decision. So, thank you very much for your time.
We have to sign. Oh.
Okay, so we'll give them a few minutes to clear out. We can go over some signatures.
Yeah,
Yep.
so that's just, is that the only one we have?
No,
Oh, he's holding them back
This
here.
is the one you recuse, that's the mall,
I went down.
so you
Oh,
don't
yeah.
sign.
Yeah, I couldn't vote on that.
So should I
No, Karen has to sign,
Karen will
she
have to come
voted
in.
yes, right? Yeah, this is an old one. They'll send us the new ones, and then we usually sign them at the next meeting.
There was no hardship, but
Oh, yeah, I'm
there
on
was
this
also detriment to the neighbor.
I'm on this one.
And I thought
Yes, for the next time.
I forgot about the mall one, I couldn't do that one.
These are packets for the next meeting.
Look at
Mr. Chairman,
Sheila.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, while the room is cleared out, can I just recommend that we do a 5-minute recess?
Absolutely. So do I have a motion for a 5-minute recess while the room clears?
For a 5-minute recess.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. 5-minute recess. We've signed our decisions from last month, and we now have to approve the August minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the August minutes as written and submitted?
I'll make the motion as written and submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And we have no further business, so I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Go Red Sox.